guys, and welcome to another episode of Woke by Accident podcast, a weekly chat about socially conscious topics impacting the culture. We are excited to have our co-host, Sambaza, host and creator of the Sambaza podcast, who hails from the Republic of Kenya. He has garnered 3 nominations for Best African Diasporan Podcast by the APVA. In addition, he is also been nominated by the Best Blog by the Texas Creator Awards. And he has been a presenter at Afro's Audio for 2023, 2024. He also has participated at the 2025 Podfest. Welcome, Sambaza.
Thank you, Jen. Hey, did you do something interesting or new at the start of the show?
What's that?
'Cause I'm usually on the side. I'm usually on the background, so you had us on the side, right? That was
I
pretty cool.
did. I just wanted to highlight our topic today is
Um,
acknowledging Mental Health Awareness Month,
yeah, okay.
and May is Mental Health Awareness. So I found this little graphic to show.
Oh, cool. Actually, I'm going to be going to a men's conference about mental health. I was there last year, and I left a bit early. This year, I also promised to go there, so I'm going to be heading out there and participating on it again. I met the pastor of that church, and I'm gonna
Mhm.
go back there again and see him. I actually we met up. Well, not met up. We ran a 5K with him, but he was running behind me, and we didn't get to speak because there were so many people. Hot chocolate run. That's a
Mhm.
good one. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah.
How are we doing today?
Yeah, doing pretty good. Ready for the weekend, and yeah.
Update. How's the dog doing? How's she doing?
You know what? She
Mrs.
is progressing along. She has a couple of more sessions
Uh
for
huh.
her therapy. I have a cute little idea for another video.
Oh,
There is, I'll share that in the chat. She does have Instagram page, and I've been posting some things. So yeah.
nice, nice, nice. All right. We'll start off with our affirmation for the day, and I'm going to say this affirmations is about mental strength. And it says, I trust myself to make decisions that align with my values and goals. I'll repeat that again. I trust myself to make decisions that align with my values and goals. Pretty cool, right?
Okay. Yes. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that. And we'll introduce our topic. As I mentioned, today, or May, the month of May, is recognizing mental health awareness. And so, in acknowledgement of that, we did want to take this episode to talk about how you can be an ally or friend to one experiencing mental health. I think we both have shared that we have known people personally who have dealt with and struggled with mental health moments and matters. And so I thought this would be an appropriate topic. This is coming from the perspective of a non professional. So, how you can support someone in your circle that is dealing with mental health.
Right. That's
Mhm.
that's an interesting topic.
It is. So, for sure. And so we actually plan to dig deeper into mental health, and it actually may carry over into the next month and have one of our licensed therapist friends join us, to get more clarity and to acknowledge this topic even further. But I thought since just you and I today, we would get into it and
Right.
talk about how we can support as non uh, health professionals, how you can support someone dealing with mental health matters.
Yeah, being an ally is tough.
Mhm.
Situations are really tough, and I'm guessing we can figure out extrapolate what we can do as allies,
Right.
not as professionals, and then we can give out our experiences with regard to what's going on. Uh, I want to put a shout out to Ed, who's come onto the show. He says peace and gratitude, family, and he has a question to start us off. What's the difference between mental health versus mental illness? Can we start off with that?
Yeah. And so again, as we shared, this is coming from a perspective of non-professionals. We are just, we did a little research into how a non-professional can support someone who is dealing with that. I don't know if you want to take a look and see what you can find for a definition for the desired question. Actually, recently, go ahead.
Yes. So when you talk about the difference between mental health, the health is like it's like a, to me, I'm looking at it as a parameter, like a 80%, 90%, whatever, and your state of mind and state of being. At that point, you are looking at yourself as how you are in relation to the your thinking capacity of you're aware of your senses, because when you talk about mental illness is totally different. Mental illness is
Mhm.
there's a lack of balance in your life, and with mental illness is something that you cannot evade. If I'm to understand correctly, it's something it's in you, and you have to deal with it. It'll never go away. It'll always be with you all the time. You can manage it with all forms of therapy, either seeing a mental illness expert, or you can take medicine. But see, with mental health, y- it is part of the mental illness together, but you can take it away and say, in terms of the mental health, is just how a person is in their being. Like you and I, we can wake up in the morning and you just don't feel like going to work. I'm just saying an example, not that we do that
Mhm.
every day, but at that point your mental health is not at full capacity or ready to work. That's how
Okay.
i would I would equate it in terms of health and illness.
Hmm. No, and this is your interpretation, right? Okay. Yeah, so to me, and like again, non-professional here, we're just sharing, right? So to me, everyone has mental health, right? So like we talked about, sharing the affirmations is promoting positive mental health behaviors, right? So we can take care of, manage our mental health as individuals, although we have not been diagnosed with, bipolarism or schizophrenia. These are like mental illness conditions that can be diagnosed by a health professional, but everybody has mental health they can manage. To me, that's how I feel. Like everyone has, some people say, I need to call in today. I need to take a mental health day to take care of me. I'm not feeling 100%. And I've done that. I may be sneezing, coughing, and I'm like, okay, I'm not going in with my germs. I'm not feeling 100% today, boss. I need, I'm going to take a day, and so I feel like that is kind of like managing, that maintenance that you need to do for yourself sometimes.
Right, right.
So,
Okay, I'll take that.
yeah, and thanks for the feedback. We appreciate that. Okay, and
We're looking
go
at
on.
allyship in communities, right?
Mhm,
Especially in the Black communities, where the stigma and barriers to care are real. Man, when we talk about
mhm,
Black communities ourselves, that's a major topic. But I think let's say for me, as a guy, right?
mhm.
I've never been brought up to look at mental health or mental health as something that we would. I know mental illness, but mental health as a way of life, to be aware of your being or your state of your mind. Actually, it's a state of
Mhm.
mind. Mental health is a state of mind. To be aware of
Okay.
your state of mind, not something that we are looked at. You're always told to look at the positive side. Look at the positivity. We grew up looking at positivity. Now, I remember. I'm going to go with my African context. I remember when I was young, an incident happened. I think there was a bombing or something, like an accident.
Mhm,
Not a bombing. Well, it was an accident, and there was this guy who came up. He's called Mr. Jenga. A lot of the Kenyans who will be listening to this will know him, and if you do a search on him, he is quite the guy who brought it out to people with regard to mental illness. So he
Mhm.
came out and was talking about this idea of, you need to be taken care of. You need a specialist to talk to you about a calamity that happened. And you see, with us Africans, we sit down and we talk about it, or depending on when you have something like a loss or something that's going to take your mind off, or like a calamity that's happened, people just sit down and talk to you. You talk about other things. You try as much to avoid talking about the subject. Now, if it's a person, like say a death in the family, you'll talk about the person, talk about their good times. You will tend to avoid the things that happen. It'll be spoken, but it'll be like on a hushed tone, but it's not going to be in the full length of things. I think that's our therapy. We become our own therapists. But in this case and scenario where something is happening and there's no family near you, you do
Mhm.
need a professional. And he was advocating for professionals to come out and people to go seek professional help. That was a
Okay.
mystery. It was not something that we were accustomed to.
Mhm.
And I think that has grown and changed, and people do talk about it. I remember watching a show today about some ladies in Kenya, and they were talking about they having a therapist like on call, and they can go to their therapist and talk about stuff. I wouldn't have thought about that in the 80s or 90s, but these
Hmm.
millennials, they do have them. Um, when I had a conversation with some men, African men, one of them actually said, "There's no way he's going to sit in the therapist's room and talk to somebody about his problems." Now,
Mhm.
I didn't go to discuss it further because I respected what he had said, but that's him. He feels that why would he give my problems for you to just sit down there and listen to them? I could tell
Mm.
them to a stranger, and a stranger will be able to tell me something else. It's one of those weird things that you agree to disagree because it's his opinion, his experience. So I let it go, but it kind of was like, oh, okay, we do have people who come from a different mentality, but I'm hoping that it's going to change. So that's my perspective when it comes to mental health. I can say per se in an African context. I don't know how you'd put it in a African American community, especially in a guy. I mean, that's an experience I I'll never experience. So I come from the African
Never
context.
experience.
I can never experience the fact that I'm a black man, but I'm not African American, and I'm African American has a different vibe when it comes to mental health than my experience as an African. Remember, those are we live in two different worlds. Even though they're the same, we do experience mental health issues. I think
Mhm.
the perspectives of how we look at it are different, first of all, and then the experiences are different.
So I guess I my question to you is that have you evolved that opinion, or do you still feel the same way as that gentleman, that I would not share, with someone my feelings, or, basically be open to counseling or therapy to address, mental health or family matters, marital matters, whatever type of matters that you may need support.
Now, before when I moved into the US, I probably would not. Right now, I have changed. I've evolved. I think with
Okay.
age comes with, and then with the wisdom that I have, or the wisdom that I think I have, I'm open to the idea. If I need to go sit down with a mental health expert, I will definitely go and sit down with them and talk about what I need to talk about, express to them my feelings, and
Hmm.
in any shape and form. If I
Hmm.
feel that it's not right, I'll tell them, hey, this is what I feel like, and can you help me? I'm good at. I think I should be good at asking for help now.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. It reminds me of the conversation that we had here on the podcast with uh, Dominic Lawson, who coincidentally has launched a podcast about mental health called Mental Health Rewritten. But he basically shared that feeling of a stigma is not just a feeling that comes from the Black community or the African community, but he's went on to share and had numbers to back it up that Native Americans and other cultures experience that same stigma. I'm not going to therapy. We're Native Americans. I'm not going to therapy. We're Irish or whatever it is because it's just a stigma. We actually have some information and that we plan to share about stigmas. I don't know if you want to go to that since we're right
Sure.
there.
No worries. I'll take that.
Yeah.
You got a
So yes.
video?
No, it's in our I think I
Yeah.
have it's on the outline. That's what I was saying if you want to go to that. But or if you can't find it handy, I can
Okay.
about
These are
stigma.
okay. Let's see. Stigma. You got like
I
we're going
messed you
into a
up.
list.
It's number 4.
Those are the sources.
Okay, so
Oh,
it's
we wanted to discuss about the stigma. So you want to discuss about what? Okay. Well,
but can you frame what you're about to say because everybody can't see that.
yeah, impact about surrounding stigma. We said
Mhm,
the issues would be like mistrust of healthcare. That is one of the most important things,
mhm,
and this is historical too. It falls on both the men and the women.
mhm.
Then there's the importance of community and faith. Ah,
And then
man,
the other is the
like,
cultural challenge that you just shared
yeah,
about, which was, your primary concern.
yeah. You have a lot of things here when you put a stigma, mistrust of the healthcare. Now, when you talk about mistrust of healthcare, you know, when you talk about the African American, I think we'll have to go back to that experiment, that famous experiment that was done. What was it called? This the one for syphilis.
Syphilis, yeah,
What was it?
in the 50s.
Right. That was the one that started. That was the one that started it all. Um, then I think with that, it kind of made people not be sure of what they want. And I've had this situation. I think if you go to my podcast and listen to one of the episodes that I talked about with my sister-in-law, she was talking about even when you went to the doctor back in the 70s, they would tell you, don't say anything to that man, the doctor, because the doctor was white. Don't say anything to that man because whatever you say to him, you don't know what you're going to get. So you'd go there and they tell you, are you okay? Yes. Are you fine? Yes. But you will let them test you and figure it out. But don't tell them that what they don't need to know. So I think that is one of the mistrust of the healthcare. And then when you get into the community and faith, now when you say community, I think what maybe I'll put it like this: the community around you determines pretty much a lot of what goes around.
Hmm.
If you bring these services for healthcare and your community accepts it, then it flows over to the young ones because they see an example. What do kids follow? They follow examples. If they see an adult doing something, they will follow that example. If you eat Brussels sprouts, your child will definitely eat Brussels sprouts. If you take a walk every day, your child will remember, even though they cannot take a walk. This is something that will be ingrained in their mind that they'll take a walk. So you have that with the community. The faith-based stuff is we are Christians, Muslims, and when we or whatever religion we subscribe to.
Hmm.
I think being religious. I'm going to put it a blanket and say being religious, whatever faith you follow. When you listen to the word that you're given by the man of faith, whoever's going to be standing in front of you, when they tell you stuff, I think that also helps you become a better man and be susceptible to trying stuff that they tell you, because they have a power in them to be able to move masses to do things. So you'll notice that if your pastor says, "Hey, we're having a drive, a blood drive. I would like you to come," and calls out and says, "I see all these brothers out here. I need to see them next week to come for the blood drive." You'll count yourselves and you'll see how many will show up. Or when the first lady says, "Hey, we're going to do a cookout, and part of the cookout we're going to bring some foods, but our foods are going to be healthy foods, because we're going to have somebody come in and talk about
Mhm.
diabetes and stuff like that, A1C stuff like." You will see there's going to be a pool for that. So faith, community, and all together have a way of bringing people together and subscribing to mental health, if you want to put it like that. So I want to ask, what about your community? If you look at it in terms of your area, local area, how do you feel that it can be an impact?
Well, no, I get that, but I feel like I wanted to, swing it back to the impact of the stigma, because that is so key. Like, even after all these years, and you've been here, what, over 20 years, you still have that same feelings that you probably wouldn't go to therapy. You know what I mean? You probably, like, a lot of people have that feeling, right? And so this information that we've looked up for the show today is that, like, ways how we can break that stigma around mental health. We had these great, powerful conversations with people who are dealing with autism, and they, are able to, thrive with their children or thrive as adults and function. Brian, shout out to Brian. And he, has a podcast. The other gentleman, guy, Stone guy, has a podcast, is an actual therapist himself, and it, deals with autism. So these different, facets of mental health, you don't have to just be dealing with that to deal with things, right? You may be dealing with a personal problem or something going on at work or family. And so I feel like the stigma is, and breaking that is so important. And so these things, and then of course community, falls in line. But this comes from Mayo Clinic, that we found ways how we can overcome the stigma. Is talking about it openly and honestly.
But Jen,
Okay.
before we get to talk
Yes.
openly I'd like you to give your version of how you would feel, how you have seen it, how you've seen the mistrust amongst the women from a women perspective, because I've given you from a male perspective. What have you seen with regard to the women in terms of, the community and faith? What do they talk about? Because that's something that I don't think we're privy to as such.
I mean, and again, we're
Girlfriends.
giving this information as non professionals, and, definitely can't speak for the faith community. I attend church when I can, miss several Sundays, but, so I really wouldn't feel comfortable saying on behalf of the faith community it's this, because that's not, I'm just me, and I'm a non-health professional. But I've had, many conversations with folks who are, and many conversations with folks that need help, that seriously are waking up every day in pain and strife, and, have had a frantic phone call with a friend, and I'm, sitting there wondering, like, how I can say the right thing as a non-professional. That's why I feel like this important is in, needed, because you may find yourself on the other side of a frantic phone call of someone who wants to S word, you know what I mean? And like, what do you do? What do you say? You know, do you call the police? Like, literally, I've, been on one of those frantic phone calls. And so, these things are needed. So I can only speak for myself, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I've been to therapy. I've been, even as a teenager, when, my mom and dad, had me go to therapy, when I went through whatever my little teenage stage, we all went to therapy as a family. So I, have experienced therapy, and, it helps, and I can, attest to that. And the things and exercises and that they have you discuss. So I realize how important it is. So I don't want to speak on behalf of like what you've asked of me.
No, what I'm
I
asking is okay. Let's. What I'm asking you is with your friends when you have a talk with your friends, right?
Mhm.
You're not giving per se professional information. I'm just talking about a normal conversation that you'll have sitting with your, say, high school buddies, and then you talk about these things, or you get into a conversation in a social setting like in clubhouse. What have you heard? Like if you
Mhm.
heard a lady say, okay, this is my thing that I am looking at. Those are the examples I'm looking at. Uh, we're not diagnosing. What we're saying is these are natural conversations that we come about.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
that's the
you
angle that
mentioned the
I'm.
mistrust. I mean, I think the
Yeah.
mistrust is there whether it's man or woman. I don't think, that is something that, is that wouldn't apply to one or the other. I think there is a general mistrust. You mentioned the Tuskegee
Yeah.
experiment.
Yes. Yes.
That there's been some films made about it. Miss Evers' Boys is one that talks about what went on. And I just looked up a blurb to 1930s. It went on for several years, but basically African American men were misled and denied treatment for syphilis by the U.S. government. Um, and and so, several people die as a result. Um,
I
yeah,
mean, did
that.
you ever have a conversation like with your grandma or your mom, and then like what I just talked about, my sister-in-law, talking about what they were told going to the hospital or what the experiences were going to the hospital and trying to get that. I think that would give a sense of um, uh, where it'll give a sense of like, okay, it does really happen on your end. I mean, we're looking at different circumstances, but I was coming from
Yeah.
the podcast way. I was talking on a podcast to somebody
Right.
else, but you essentially say you've been here, and you can say, okay, somebody can relate to that, like their grandmother or mother may have told them something.
Okay. Yeah, no. In those instances, like I said, we did. My immediate family, went to counseling with me as a teenager, just kind of little teenage stage, giving my parents a headache, and we, went to counseling. But, my I don't have that grandma experience like some people did. I don't have to go into all that, but I don't have that grandma moment on either side. And so, yeah, I mean, basically everything I really know about mental health, I kind of learned as an adult. And so, yeah.
Okay. But Jen, you're a good child. You're not giving them hell. You were just being a teenager. Teenagers were always teenagers.
I
Woo.
mean, I was stressed back then, and it's even silly even repeating it, but my parents had me later in life, and so it was just a different, maybe had they been the younger parents. I think a lot of people have children younger, back in those days, and so my parents are older dealing with me as a teenager, so their interpretation of the things that I was going through, even so, like staying up late on the phone, it was like a big deal, where it may not have been a big deal if you're only what 19, 20 years older than your kids or something. But, so I don't know, just different things that we were experiencing back then. And, so, oh my God, so long ago.
Yeah.
But we did have those conversations,
Right.
so.
So you said all we have to do is the talking openly and honestly with each other. Having these conversations about mental health in the daily life and in social networks. To kind of normalize the topic. I think that's a
Yes,
you started it
normalized.
off, and I think that's a great thing. I, do you think the progress of normalizing it has helped so far?
I mean, I feel like it's making a turn.
Hmm.
It's making a tide and a curve towards
Hmm.
that. We have media personalities, some of our favorite people that we see on TV or YouTube, talking about mental health, encouraging, the advertisements that you see for virtual, counseling that you can sign up for with as easy as clicking a button. So I feel like there is a shift that it's, media is mentioning it more, that it is okay to have, you don't have to go into a dreary, dark office. You can have these conversations, you know, from the comfort of your home, virtually even. And so I feel like that makes people feel comfortable and, makes it more normal, normalizing it. So I feel like we are shifting that way.
Yeah, and also the educating part. When you talk about educating yourself and others, um, when you learn about especially mental health conditions and the illnesses,
Mhm,
it is something that you have to sit and learn. I I did have I do have a sibling who is having mental health conditions. Actually, she has
mhm,
mental illness. And at first, when it was being put out, people would come and think that, oh, it's like something religion you have to be prayed for, and then it'll be going away. And I was like, no, 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 no. This is not going away. It has
mhm.
to be taken care of. There's medicine to be taken, and then you need a caregiver. It's like a job. It's like the caregiver is 100% because it never goes away. So it's always going to be there. So what people need to do is to learn about those conditions. I
Right.
took upon myself to learn about the condition and what we need to do and how we need to help the person. And once you get that knowledge, and this is really important, and also to go through the misconceptions,
Mhm,
you stand a better chance of understanding the person from where they're coming from and accepting their condition first and then understanding where they're coming from. Then lastly, you can help them be themselves up to the point that they can, because remember, when they go through things, especially when they go through episodes, I
mhm,
tell you, they change. It's somebody else that you're talking to.
mm,
And you just gotta be there. You it is a different um perspective. It opens your eyes up. I'll be honest with you, on this podcast. Last year I went, she had an episode and she was in a facility, and I walked into the facility to see her. um
mhm,
and you see there are other people over there. They look normal, but they're not normal. uh
mhm,
then we sorry, I'm going to take you on this tangent. So we were sitting down and everyone else was around us, and they were also, it was like a visiting time, and there are people visiting each other. The differences that each one of them was projecting or was expressing when they were being visited by their people, or their relatives, was totally different, totally
mhm,
different.
mhm,
And you're sitting there because it's like a circle spot. So
mhm.
when you're sitting here, you can see the other person on that side, and that person can see, and they can see you, and then you can see that when they're talking and they're having the interaction, you can actually see, and you're like, man, yeah, it is different. So
Right.
with all this, it's something that has never you can never fully understand what it is, because the human brain is in its own way, has so many things, even they cannot figure it out. But all I can say is it has different facets. So you just have to learn and know how to deal with the person, understand their triggers, and then try to help them in the best way you can. Meds, they have to take their medicine and what have you, but just learn, educate yourself, and also be mindful of 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 their feelings, because they do have feelings even as they are suffering inside.
Right. And then since you mentioned someone that has, a mental episode, I did have a section prepared. I know we're jumping around. So hopefully you can follow where I am here in our notes. But and this information comes from healthdirect.gov, how you can support someone having a mental breakdown. And you've mentioned some of these. I think you just kind of were sharing from actually dealing with it, but this is actually from Health Direct, listing and offer reassurance, which you've mentioned that stay calm and patient as how you can help. Suggest grounding or calming activities. And the examples of those are to go for a walk, to find a quiet place, or do a simple grounding activity together, like deep breathing and listening to music. And so, we on some of our recent episodes, we talked about deep breathing and how important that is and how effective breathing is. And, I've actually, had an opportunity to do some breathing exercises recently, and it helps for sure. And then listening to music, and we talked about um oh god, what are those beats called? Binary beats. So binary beats, can be effective for listening to affirmations and just really finding that quiet place that can impact anyone, not necessarily when just having a episode, but just for your personal mental health that needs to be tended to and maintained, just everybody, right? Some other ones, helping with practical tasks like preparing a meal, helping with chores. Some things as simple as chores can drive someone up the wall. Um, because I'm not sure who's gonna see this. I have seen someone who deals with, I guess they've been diagnosed with ADHD, get stressed out to the point of frenzy over chores like ironing in a big pile, and just chaos all over, things stacked here and there, clutter, and just it'll drive somebody up the wall. So imagine someone who's trying to support saying, hey, can I help you with that? Can I take something off your plate? It's that's support. That's support. You know what I mean? Support can be the littlest thing, right? Preparing a meal, oh, let me DoorDash you a meal. You know what I'm saying? Oh, let me, help you with your ironing your clothes. You got a big stack that need to be ironed. Let me help you with that. Oh, you gotta sort, you know, the room is cluttered. Let me help you with that a little bit, right? So these are things, even though small, can help.
And also, when they say encourage the social contact, because some of these people, when
Mhm.
they are experiencing their breakdowns, or depending on what there is, and these are different, they'll behave in a different way. You will, if it's somebody close to you, you'll know their triggers. They'll probably go quiet, they won't talk to you, or they'll just
Mhm.
sit somewhere.
Mhm.
Or if some people can be bubbly at one time, then a few minutes later they just become something else, and you're like, okay, what happened? So these are the things. Maybe a walk, take a walk. Try and encourage a walk. You just walk and get a fresh, get fresh ideas. um, that could be one of the things that you can do that can help. Or just sit down with the person. Sometimes they just need company. Just have
Right,
here and
correct.
just sit and look at them, and you look at each other, just sit in the room. Maybe you will go in there, not they're not feeling in their best of moods, and then you kind of help them clean out. Like you said, they have ADHD and stuff like that. You say, hey, look, I'm coming here, I'm going to help you out. You come in, you help them out, you do what you have to do. Then you say, hey, look, let's just sit. I just want to sit, watch some
Right.
TV together, or just sit and talk, or turn off everything, be quiet, and just see what you can do. There's
For
other
sure.
thing about stereotypes. That is the one thing that people have to learn when they start talking about people who have, like, if you have a mental health crisis
Mhm.
or mental illness, be choosy of your words when you talk to people. It's just like, remember, people who are hard of hearing.
Mhm.
Remember what Sharon told us on the previous episode. She said, when you're talking to somebody who is hard of hearing, or cannot speak, the worst thing you can do is give them your back. You know,
Mhm.
that's the worst insult you can ever do to them. Walk, turn around. So there are instances when people are having, like, even you, when you're having your mental health crisis, and someone goes and does something that says something about you, and that could make you just flip over, you know.
Right. And since you mentioned that, I did find a piece about what not to do. So I think this is a good part to
Really?
insert that. Again, from Health Direct, what not to do, do not minimize their feelings. An example of that is to say, just snap out of it. You know what I mean? So there's no snapping out of it, right? This is like a reality for a lot of people. Another is don't judge or criticize. And then another is don't try to fix everything right away. Where you want to, come in and support. Maybe, hey, can I take something off your plate? Can I, get a meal for you, DoorDash you a meal, or help you with the laundry? But you don't want to come in and like, oh, let me do this. Like, like some people, their think of help is to take over, and you don't want to come in and take over anybody.
Like, I'll tell you a story, right?
Hmm.
So I told you my sister is diagnosed with schizophrenia, right?
Hmm.
So when she when you look online at her texts, when she's writing her stuff, she will write stuff that is very precise, great English. When I say vocabulary is at par, people don't realize what's going on, but they think it's normal. That when you tell them, look, no, she's not okay, she is not okay, people just look at me like, what are you saying? And then they look at what is being said. Or even when she writes,
Hmm.
like, she can write notes and she can write letters. Man, the handwriting, nice, perfect handwriting. And when she writes the words, I mean, on point, everything is on point. But to a normal person from the outside looking in, they'd be like, oh no, she's a normal person, and nothing's wrong with her, because she'll be dressed well and she'll be well. But for us who are around her, we can tell you, no, that's not a good day today. It's not a good day.
Hmm.
Yeah. So,
Right.
yeah, it's it's a tricky slope.
It is, and it can be emotionally taxing dealing with someone going through these things. So, that's why I think it's important that we address our own mental health, and that even if you are not diagnosed with an illness, everyone has mental health that should be tended to and maintained, whether it is taking a walk by yourself or, taking quiet time to do affirmations or prayer or maybe take a long hot bath with Epsom salt and just, have that quiet time. Those are things that can really, support positive mental health behaviors from what we've learned. So,
Right, right. Let's take a break and see what we have in the chats today. We have some people
okay.
tuning in. We have a lot of people tuning in. Um, let's see. Ed says expert responses. This was when we were talking about the differences between mental health and mental illness.
Mhm.
And then he talked about, oh, with all due respect, when the police pull you over, my brother, they don't see an African. They see you the same as I, and we know the name that is. Yes, that is true. When the police pulls you over, they have no idea what the difference is. Yeah. So mental health is a universal thing, not a cultural thing.
Sure.
True,
Sure.
true, true, true.
Mhm.
It does transverse everyone, and yeah, it is. It is. It's just the way different It's the way people look at it. It's the mindset. It's actually the mindset.
It is. It is.
So uh, I'm gonna say it is a culture thing. Okay, it's a universal thing. Yes, it is universal, but the culture plays in how the response to mental health issues, because culture
True,
is
but you're not the only culture dealing with that. So,
no. That's what
yeah,
I'm saying.
yeah.
There are thousands and thousands of culture, and culture is not tribal. Culture is different ways of where you are, how you take things. Now the culture determines how they will look at the mental health. Remember what I said. When we look at people experiencing things, um we try to we kind of, I don't want to say we gloss over it, but we give that sense of, yes, we talk about it, but we try and get your mind off of the subject matter for us for some time, like you're put in a cocoon for that time, and then
Mhm.
you
Right.
experience the good, not good stuff, but you experience something else, and then you're brought back to where the issue is, and then kind of, it's like you being taken into a seesaw back and forth to your mind until it settles,
Mhm.
not being pushed into directly to what it is going on. Now, there's some cultures where, and I don't know, maybe they just, okay, this is the thing that's happening. This is reality. This is what you're going to deal with. This is what it is. This is, um, and I think that's where there's a difference with the culture. The culture is what determines how we respond to it. So I think,
Mhm.
Brother Ed, you've locked onto something there. Appreciate your contribution.
For sure. For sure.
Mhm.
So,
Oh,
I guess,
quick break. We gotta talk about our proverb of the day. We
okay.
didn't talk about it. Yeah.
Okay.
So the proverb comes from Mali, and Mali is one of the countries. It was once a part of three great pre-colonial Sudanic empires: Ghana, Mali, and Songhai. They have the largest mud brick building, which Mali is a home to the Great Mosque of Dijene, which is the world's largest mud brick building, standing about 20 meters tall. And the Musa, the Mali Empire was ruled by Mansa Musa, one of the richest men in history, whose wealth was estimated to be 400 billion in today's money. Ooh, look at that! Look at that! Look at that! So, today's proverb says, "A man with too much ambition cannot sleep in peace." A man with too much ambition cannot sleep in peace. What do you think? What can you? How can you? How can you?
So, I'm seeing a man's actions are more important than his ancestry.
So, a man with too much ambition. So you have a lot of ambition. You cannot sleep in peace. Um,
Man's actions are more important.
so what do you think? You would have. So I think when you have too much ambition, to me, okay, here's what I'm going to say. You have too
Mhm.
much ambition. You are not going to. Uh, you're not going to focus
Mhm.
on your sleep, because sleep will not be one of your most important thing. So you're trying to be more ambitious, like, okay, I want to do this, and this, and this, and that. Well, you'll forget sleep, which is the most important thing. You need like at least 8 hours of sleep, or 6 to 8 hours of sleep, and then after that, you wake up refreshed. So taking that off means you will not be in peace.
There you go. Yeah. Interesting. Okay, thank you for sharing the proverb.
What about you? What do
Um,
you say about the proverb?
no, I received that. I guess I haven't heard that one before.
Okay,
Um,
take a shot at it.
no,
A
I mean I
man
think
with too much ambition cannot sleep in peace.
yeah, I mean like you said, because of your hectic lifestyle or your business has involved you so much as a or consumed you as
Mm.
so much as a person, there's sacrifices because of that. It kind of actually makes me think of P. Diddy, actually. Kind of sadly, that's been a topic that has been, all over the media. But just thinking about some of those things, like, he would use as like inspiration to aspiring artists and things like that. Like, you don't sleep, you hustle, and like, and other people say it too, like, you know, hustlers don't sleep, and things like that, or people who are driven don't, rest, and you gotta walk here and get the cheesecake, whatever. But at what cost though, right? You know what I mean? So yeah, so or
I like that.
success and all that.
Yeah, I like that. That's great. Okay, we can go back to
Yeah.
our.
So it's definitely some sacrifices when you live your lifestyle a certain way, when, business and money and success is, what consumes you, right? So, yeah.
Right, right, definitely, definitely. Okay,
All right.
so let's get back into the mental health illness or mental health awareness. I told you I was going to go to a top not a topic, but talk this weekend
Uh-huh.
and kind of hang out with them and see what they're talking about. And usually they bring in somebody from they bring somebody from outside who comes in and talks. So I'm really anxious to see who's going to be there this year. But it's men and they come and chat and love it. I wish I could have more of these though.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and wind it down. We thank you guys for tuning in, whether you're catching this on the live uh, taping or the replay. We appreciate you for tapping into this episode, and the audio will be available very soon. Any additional thoughts, Sambaza, before we wrap it up?
Oh, you guys, you can find me at Sambaza Podcast anywhere on Apple, Spotify. Well, there's no more Google, but TikTok and anywhere at Sambaza Podcast. Wow, what can I say?
You can buy you a
I
coffee.
got good reviews. I got good reviews on the last episode, last two episodes I did about Mr. Tom Wolfe on my podcast. This was an older guy talking about he's lived in Kenya for a long time, worked with the Peace Corps, and
Mhm.
I've had good reviews about that particular episode. And I'll
Good.
post it on my socials. And hey, guys, you can always buy me a coffee. I'll never say no to a coffee. My link is on the show notes, and Jen as well has some coffee. All right, Jen, you can go ahead and say where they can find you. Say blah blah blah. Pew, pew, pew.
Yeah, we
Go.
are available at Woke by Accident, and the other handles will be available on the show notes. So we thank you guys for tuning in. We hope that today's conversations has inspired and enlightened you. If you found today's episode meaningful, please consider sharing it with friends, family. Our collective awareness and advocacy play a crucial role in creating positive change. We invite you to stay tuned for more engaging content, and we look forward to continuing these important conversations in the future. So, with that, we thank you again, and everybody take care.